Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Syria snubs the head of the Arab League while security forces launch fresh assault on Homs. Gaddafi's disappearance fuels renewed speculation about his whereabouts. And the U.S. appeals to the Palestinian Authority to abandon its UN statehood bid. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now.
Reuters quoted a coordinator of the operations unit to find Gaddafi, saying there is information indicating that Muammar al-Gaddafi was in the city of Bani Walid and left. He said it is likely that Gaddafi headed to Libya's southern borders with Niger and Chad.
On the other hand, the U.S. State Department said there is no evidence that Gaddafi or his family members have crossed the border into Niger. A State Department spokesperson said that authorities in Niger informed the U.S. ambassador that those who crossed the border into Niger were high-ranking officials in Gaddafi's regime.
Meanwhile, the world is holding its breath in anticipation of news that pinpoints the location of fugitive Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, who could still be hiding in Libya.
Burkina Faso and Niger's denial of Gaddafi's presence in the territories increased the complication of the situation in Libya, especially as the entry into the cities of Sirte and Bani Walid is being delayed, which some believe has given Gaddafi and his children more time to arrange their escape. Gaddafi's disappearance has evoked fear that there is a domestic and international conspiracy to smuggle him and his children out of the country.
Gaddafi has escaped and disappeared in the vast deserts of Libya. Yesterday's media reports claiming he fled to Burkina Faso via Niger were denied by both Niger and Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso openly stated that it has no knowledge of Gaddafi's presence in its territory.
We have no knowledge of his presence in Burkina Faso. As for the claim that he may have headed to Niger or other countries, we do not have any information, and we do not feel that we're obligated to know. We will reveal what we know on the subject when he arrives at our border.
So, the only confirmed news is that Gaddafi has disappeared from the public, but no one knows his location. Even the United States, with all its advanced tracking technologies, said that his hiding place has not yet been determined. In addition, French and Nigerian military sources said that Gaddafi and his children were not in the convoy of armored trucks and military vehicles that entered Niger Monday night. Gaddafi will have to appear someday, either killed or captured by the revolutionaries, or as a refugee in an African or non-African country. None of this is important at the moment. What worries the revolutionaries and the National Transitional Council is that his disappearance may be the result of the failure to completely cleanse Libya of his influence. دون قتال أوحى للبعض بأن ذلك قد يسهل هروب القذافي وأبنائه من خلال. Some believe that the delayed entry into the two cities of Sirte and Bani Walid without any fighting may have facilitated Gaddafi and his children's escape by giving them more time. Speculation began circulating about a domestic and foreign conspiracy to hide him and provide him with a safe haven. In this context, some of his loyalists and associates were captured by revolutionaries, such as Foreign Deputy Foreign Minister Khalid Qaim, who was found hiding in his relative's home.
يبحث الثوار عن سلاح الكتائب بيتا بيتا يجمعونه لضمان عدم استعماله ضد ليبيا كما يقولون. مهمة شاقة طبعا.
Revolutionaries are searching for the battalion's weaponry in every house. They collect weapons in order to ensure that they won't be used against Libya, or so they say. This is, of course, a difficult task. The revolutionaries are holding their breath, trying to manage the security situation. Meanwhile, the whole world is also holding its breath, as Libya's stability depends on locating Gaddafi and his children. Some reports say Gaddafi has smuggled gold and billions of dollars, which he would not hesitate to use to destabilize Libya and its coastal areas. Gaddafi was a problem when he was leading Libya and has become an even bigger problem now that he has disappeared from Libya. The man has a long tradition of fueling chaos. His disappearance may give him a chance to once again create chaos, either inside Libya or in its neighboring regions.
Seven people were killed and several others injured in Syria during a military operation in the city of Homs. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said soldiers and security forces used heavy machine guns near the Khalid ibn al-Walid mosque in the neighborhood of Al-Khalidia, adding that parts of the city resembled a battlefield. A video posted online showed Syrian soldiers firing at an individual bleeding on the ground as gunfire is heard in the background. The location where the video was filmed was not specified.
With their childlike behavior, these soldiers, joking around while being filmed with cell phone cameras, seem as though they're on a Boy Scouts trip. However, their state-sanctioned weapons and the tanks rolling behind them indicate otherwise. But they're acting as if they're not going to launch an operation. They are the protectors of their homeland, as the Baathists say. It is not clear how the Syrian regime will comment on these images. Here, soldiers are taking pride in the cold-blooded killing of an injured person tossed on the ground. Observers say the regime is using its most loyal units in its attempt to strike at the mobilization demanding its downfall. However, this video is not wholly representative of the army. Activists continue to post images of officers and soldiers announcing their defections from the army, which are later denied by the regime's media outlets. This clip, filmed in Rostan, shows what could be the first time soldiers go out publicly. It is also not clear how the regime will respond to this development. A few weeks earlier, activists posted these images of a house in Al-Rustan, saying that several of those who defected were taking refuge in it, when security and army forces attacked the house, killing everyone inside. These army units continued their patrols and finally reached the Syrian town of Al-Nuqta. The residents of Homs woke up at dawn on Wednesday to find a large number of these forces in their city. There was heavy gunfire with the use of a wide range of weapons. All communication was cut off. A few hours later, the local coordination committee's websites began posting the names of those killed and injured. Their numbers were not definitive and the images could not be posted online. The center of the city, which has gained the title of the capital of the Syrian Revolution, seems deserted. This designation is because Homs was the first city that responded to Daraa's call to topple the regime. And since that day, Homs has been demonstrating despite the large number of killed, injured, and detained residents.
يؤكد أن الحراك المطالب بإسقاط النظام ما فتئ يزداد زخما.
The images from Homs and other Syrian cities confirm that the mobilization demanding the downfall of the regime continues to grow. Some believe this justifies Damascus's request to postpone the scheduled visit of Arab League Secretary General Nabil al-Arabi on Thursday. A later date will be specified for the meeting. The Secretary General was to propose an Arab initiative to Syrian officials to end the crisis that has lasted 6 months. It is not clear whether the visit will be held on Saturday as planned, but it is certain that Arab foreign ministers will meet again next week to review the Syrian case in light of the rapid developments. Firas Kalani, BBC.
A Syrian revolutionary website published an online manual to help the peaceful protesters face the security campaigns against them during their demonstrations. More specifically, the guidebook gives lessons for nonviolent protests. Omar Harguz reports.
A Syrian protester's guide for effective and successful demonstrations. Dear Syrian protester, do not let them win the peaceful battle over you. You are the perpetual winner of nonviolence. This is a guidebook published online by the Ahrar Syrian Association in cooperation with the Syrian website Mundus. It gives guidelines to protesters for the best ways to make masks that protect them from the tear gas. The guidebook advises protesters to maintain the peaceful nature of the revolution in all of their actions, especially in direct confrontations. In addition, it suggests that protesters wear thick clothing to ease the pain of beatings and running shoes so that they can easily escape during clashes. The guidebook also requests that protesters not carry any notebooks or documents with information of their friends and acquaintances, especially those who participate in the movements, or passwords for their online accounts. The guidebook suggests a number of ways for the Syrian youth to gather and rally, as well as quick evacuation routes through side streets. The guidebook calls on protesters not to vandalize public property and not to use or carry any form of weapon in order to preserve the peacefulness of the revolution. However, while the guidebook contains numerous suggestions for how protesters can defend themselves if they are subject to assaults from the Shabiha, it does not provide any advice for what to do when they are subject to gunfire, rocket-propelled grenades, or nail bombs, which is happening right now in several Syrian cities.
Ten people were killed and dozens wounded in a bombing that targeted the High Court building in downtown New Delhi, the Indian capital. Government officials believed that the bombing was aimed at destabilizing the country.
الهند على موعد مع التفجير من جديد خلال أقل من شهرين والهدف هذه المرة.
India was attacked for a second time in less than 2 months. This time, the bombing targeted the High Court in central New Delhi. The bomb was placed in a bag left in the reception hall, while approximately 100 people were waiting in line at the court's main entrance to receive entry permits. Dozens were killed and injured. The police cordoned off the surrounding areas and evacuated the site. Ambulances transported the wounded to a hospital in the capital. For its part, the government condemned the attack, believing it was aimed at causing panic and undermining the country's stability.
We should never be frightened by terrorist groups. We are determined to capture the perpetrators of this horrific crime and bring them to justice.
وأعاد التفجير الذي استهدف نيودلهي تفجيرات بومباي إلى الأذهان.
The bombing that targeted New Delhi was a reminder of the Mumbai bombings this past July, which killed 26 people, and the 2008 bombings, which killed 166.
والتي أشعلت توترات بين الهند وباكستان على خلفية.
The bombing sparked tension between India and Pakistan, as New Delhi accused Islamabad of backing the groups that carried out the bombings.
24 people were killed in a double bombing carried out by 2 people with explosive devices. The bombing targeted a senior security official in Quetta City in southwestern Pakistan. One of the 2 bombers blew himself up in a booby-trapped vehicle near a car belonging to Farooq Shehzad, Deputy Inspector General of the Frontier Court in Baluchistan. The other gunman broke out in Shehzad's home and detonated his explosives, killing a number of Shehzad's guards. Security sources confirmed that Shehzad was not seriously wounded. Meanwhile, the Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack and said that it was a response to the Quetta authorities' arrest of a senior al-Qaeda leader.
The 4th trial session of Egypt's ousted President Hosni Mubarak has been held in the capital Cairo amid tight security. The court convened to hear more testimonies. The police chief, Mohammed Abdel Hakim, was charged with giving false testimony. He denied that he had any knowledge that police were armed or given orders to shoot protesters. Mubarak and his aides are charged with ordering the killing of more than 800 protesters during anti-regime rallies. The ousted president and his sons also face corruption charges. Previous trial sessions saw heavy scuffles between Mubarak's opponents and supporters. Protesters accused the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, which took power after Mubarak's ouster, of dragging its feet. They want the council to be more serious in charging and punishing him and his henchmen. Yemen has witnessed yet another day of anti-regime demonstrations. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in the southern city of Taiz. Protesters chanted slogans in support of the revolution, shouting freedom and God is great. They also denounced the bombing of Yemeni towns by forces loyal to embattled ruler Ali Abdullah Saleh. At several points during the peaceful demonstrations, government troops opened fire on protesters. Protesters in Yemen have intensified since early June. This after Saleh went to Saudi Arabia for treatment of his injuries received in an attack. The people of Yemen want the complete downfall of Saleh's regime. They say the revolution is peaceful and will continue until victory. Since protests broke out in February in Bahrain, many people, including women and children, have been killed, injured, imprisoned, and tortured with the help of Saudi and UAE troops. But 6 months on, the will of Bahrainis remains intact, calling for the ouster of the al-Khalifa regime. With hundreds of protesters to have recently gone on a hunger strike, including famous doctors and prominent rights activists, will Bahrainis succeed in completing their revolution?
It's almost 7 months since the ruling al-Khalifa regime began its crackdown on anti-government protests with the help of neighboring Saudi Arabia. Dozens of Bahrainis, including children, have been killed by the al-Khalifa forces and their Saudi backers. Thousands of people, including medics, rights activists, senior clerics, and former lawmakers, have been jailed. After months of detention, some 200 activists, including dozens of doctors and nurses, are now on hunger strike, protesting the ongoing crackdown on the streets and the tortures inside prisons. The Bahraini military court has decided to release the remaining detained medics who have been on hunger strike. However, charges against them have not been dropped, and they remain at high risk of being rearrested at any time.
Well, we know that the King's decree has been overruled and the detained are once again facing military court tribunals, which obviously it seems that they're guilty until proven innocent. We're adding our voices to insist that they be tried in civilian courts.
Meanwhile, about a dozen Irish doctors and nurses have shown solidarity with their Bahraini colleagues by staging a hunger strike.
A new international diplomatic mobilization was launched between occupied Jerusalem and Ramallah to bring the Palestinians back to the bargaining table ahead of their UN bid for statehood recognition this month. A U.S. delegation met with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The delegation also met with Israeli officials yesterday to coordinate their positions regarding the Palestinian statehood move. Meanwhile, Palestinian mobilization efforts are being launched at the internal level to rally support for the declaration of a Palestinian state at the UN. Also, a media campaign was launched in several languages, explaining the Palestinian position, in addition to other symbolic campaigns.
After failing to prevent the Palestinians from pursuing their statehood bid at the UN, Israel and the US began shifting their focus to the day following the vote. A US delegation led by the US President's Special Advisor Dennis Ross and US Special Envoy to the Middle East David Hale held talks behind closed doors with Israeli officials. The two sides discussed ways to help avoid acts that would further deteriorate the situation on on the ground, as well as ways to convince the Palestinians to sign a statement to resume peace talks.
The US delegation is looking for a formula and a mechanism to bring the Palestinian side back to the bargaining table. We hope this mission will succeed. We insist on holding direct talks, as it's the only way to help establish a viable Palestinian state.
This is exactly what David Hale and the Quartet's special envoy, Tony Blair, are trying to convey to the Palestinian president.
The Palestinian leadership has made up its mind. We are at the bottom of the hour and the political climate is heated. Israel will not yield to international pressure. It will neither stop the construction of settlements nor resume talks based on the June 4th, 1967 borders. Israel is the one pulling the plug on the peace process. Therefore, no one should mount pressure on President Abu Mazen or on the Palestinian leadership, which has adopted a clear position to counter the Israeli decision.
Israel is hinting at launching a new escalation while continuing to turn a blind eye on the increasing acts of aggression committed by its settlers in the West Bank. The Palestinians are focusing on the September 20th UN bid. They are launching media and diplomatic campaigns, which include broadcasting televised messages in 6 languages, including Hebrew and Russian.
The world's countries are invited to recognize Palestinian membership at the UN.
This chair, which was handmade from Palestinian olive wood, is set to tour the world under the theme, Palestine Deserves. Israel is continuing to monitor the situation with anger while seeking to commit the Palestinians to its conditions and keep them away from achieving international legitimacy.
In other diplomatic news, the United States is doing its best to halt the deterioration of relations between Israel and Turkey. That's the word from a State Department spokesperson who said that improved ties between Jerusalem and Ankara is in the best interest of both nations.
Well, you know, we are concerned. We have, over many months, tried to work with our ally Turkey and our ally Israel to strengthen and improve their bilateral relationship. We still believe that getting back to a good partnership between them is in each of their interests, and we will continue to work for that goal with both of them, but we are concerned about the state of the relationship today.
And this news just released. The Shin Bet Security Service announced that 2 weeks ago in the Gilo neighborhood of Jerusalem, a suicide bomber was caught in the act of attempting to detonate himself in that Jerusalem neighborhood. The suspect has also been identified with being involved in the March 23rd bombing in Jerusalem at a bus station right in the center that was responsible for killing a British tourist. Joining us now in the studio to discuss a range of diplomatic and security issues is Kadima Knesset member Nman Shai. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now tell me, the head of the IDF Homefront Command is warning of a coming storm, so to speak, whereas the Minister of Defense is saying the equivalent of there's not a cloud in the sky.
So
well, you're a Reserve Brigadier General and you're the former IDF spokesman. Where do you stand on this issue?
At the center. No, seriously. I think none of them is right. None of them, with all due respect. The first statement came out from a certain feeling by the head of the Home Command that he has to make sure that the public is ready for whatever comes. And a few hours later, the defense minister woke up in the morning and sent all his troops, including himself, to the television station saying, well, our situation, the defense situation, hasn't been that good. That's also not true, because we know what happened. You just reported about another attempt for a suicide bomber and so on. So it has not been so in our history. Nonsense. I believe it's just the middle or the center between the two of them. We may have a war somewhere in the future, hopefully not, but currently the situation is quite stable and comparing with the alternative, that's all. So don't take it too seriously, not the first one and not the later.
Let's turn to the diplomatic front. Now, the opposition chairwoman and the head of your party, Kadima, Tzipi Livni, is basically appears to be holding the prime minister responsible for the deterioration of relations with Turkey. Now, much of this diplomatic fallout happened after Israel refused to issue a formal apology for the deaths of these 9 activists in 2010. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I feel that we had a certain stage a few months ago where we could resolve it, maybe by expressing sorrow and paying some compensations directly or indirectly. We should see in front of us the strategic importance of the Israeli-Turkish relationship. This is a crucial issue for Israel, not only because we used to sell them so much, not only because we used to military cooperate with them, because they are now the most stable Arab state in the region. And we have to keep our relations with them. And so we made a mistake a few months ago, and since then, things went out of control, and now we are faced with a serious confrontation with Turkey.
But let me ask you, do you believe that Israel owes them an actual apology due to the events that took place?
Not apology. Apology I would not, but I will find the right wording. And I'll be honest with you, if words can help, let them work. We have all our own kavod atzmi. We respect ourselves. We give all the credit to the IDF. That's fine. But at the same time, we should think also about the future. Where are we going from here? And if it helps, I'm not sure it will, but if it works, let's do it without losing our dignity as Israelis.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.